think I get the answer. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before this jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and nothing but the truth. Take a seat, please. Unless you're from the state police, I assume that's our evidence.
I gotta take one more step.
So where do you want to keep this? Over there?
That's fine. Yes. Sorry, we need that.
Thank you. Just a few minutes, please. Are you ready to proceed?
I am.
Great. And we have some other documents or other matters coming in.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury, stating your full name and your last name for the record?
Good afternoon. My name is William J. Feeney. My last name is spelled F-E-E-N-E-Y.
What do you do for a living, sir?
I'm a sergeant detective with the Boston Police Department, assigned to the Drug Control Unit in District 14 out in Brighton.
And in total, how long have you been a member of the Boston Police Department?
29 years.
And can you describe how long have you been a member of the Drug Control Unit where you're currently assigned?
I've been out in Brighton approximately 11 months.
Can you describe some of your other assignments and roles with the Boston Police Department throughout your career?
Yes, upon graduating from the academy in 1988, I was assigned to Area B2 in Roxbury. I was there for approximately 2 years. I was transferred to the Drug Control Unit in 1990. I spent 7 years in the Drug Control Unit working throughout the city. In 1997, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant. I spent 2.5 years in uniform patrol back in Area B2 in Roxbury. In the fall of 2000, I was promoted. I was transferred back into the drug unit, and 6 months later, promoted to the rank of sergeant detective. From 2000 on, I've been in various drug control units throughout the city.
Now, can you explain to the jury what a drug control unit is and what they do?
It's a group of officers that respond to citizens' complaints about drug dealing in the community, as well as initiating their own investigations, drug dealing throughout the city.
And how many different drug control units are there for the Boston Police Department?
I believe there's 12.
And in total, how long have you been a member of a drug control unit?
Somewhere in the vicinity of about 24 years.
And in total, how long have you been in charge of a drug control unit?
18 years.
And fair to say a drug control unit is a set team, members within each unit that works together on a regular basis?
That's correct, yes.
All right, can you describe the general team usually within each district?
The squad is comprised of a sergeant, a detective, and depending upon the district that they're in, it could be anywhere from 4 to 5 patrol officers.
And have you had training beyond in the field relative or specific to narcotics distribution?
Yes, I have.
Can you explain some of those trainings to the jury?
I've attended classes and seminars given by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and the Boston Police Academy relative to different trafficking trends in drugs, how drugs are sold on the streets, different methods of packaging drugs, different methods drug dealers use for communicating, different surveillance and counter-surveillance techniques that drug dealers use.
And later in your career, in some of those trainings, have you been asked to conduct or be a part of those trainings?
Yes, I have.
Now, sir, in your work, either as a head or as working in the drug control unit, it's fair to say that you work on short and long-term investigations?
Yes, we do.
All right, did you have a chance to conduct surveillance on a regular basis in the field?
Pretty much every day we're doing surveillance somewhere.
And that surveillance, you observe hand-to-hand transactions or what you believe to be hand-to-hand transactions in the field?
That's correct, yes.
And you've made arrests for those offenses?
Yes, we have.
All right, have you have you done undercover work previously?
In my earlier years, I did, yes.
And have you assisted as a head of a drug control unit in your later years with undercover work?
I supervise undercover work within my squad, yes.
And your team has made arrests for those undercover operations?
Yes, we have.
Have you participated in the execution of search warrants?
Yes, I have.
Have you written search warrants?
Yes, I have.
All right. How many over the years do you think you've written?
Well over a couple of hundred.
Now, have you previously testified as an expert in the area of narcotics distribution?
Yes, I have.
Roughly how many times do you think you've testified?
Several dozen times.
And can you name some of the courts you previously testified in?
West Roxbury District Court, Dorchester District Court, Roxbury District Court, Boston Municipal Court, and Suffolk Superior Court.
Now, in some of those cases where you qualified as an expert in the area of narcotics distribution?
Yes, I was.
Can you explain to the jury, on a general basis, how a drug trafficking organization is structured?
The organization, you have your larger dealers in the source countries. Just to give you an example of Colombia, Mexico, they're bringing the product.
Judge, I object.
I'm going to give a very brief history about some of the organizational structures.
Any evidence in this case about Colombia or any place else like that?
Not yet. We'll might get some. So, continue, please.
Once the drugs are brought from the source country or city into the states, it's then distributed to larger dealers throughout the states, who then have their network of mid-level dealers, who will then distribute it down to the lower street-level dealers for their distribution.
And sir, can you describe just generally what marijuana is?
Marijuana is a vegetable matter. It's naturally grown. It's been around for thousands of years. It contains a THC level, which gives you a euphoric high.
Are there different types of marijuana?
There's several different types. More and more, they're becoming crossbred with other different types. There's literally hundreds of different types of marijuana out on the market today.
Are you trained in the recognition of these various types of marijuana?
Yes, I am.
What differentiates between some of the types of marijuana?
The difference primarily is the color and the texture of it. A lot of your high-grade marijuanas will have a goldish color or a purplish color to it, purplish pinkish color. Some of your lower-grade marijuana will have a completely green or a green and brown mixture together.
You heard the term Kush before?
Yes, I have.
What does that mean to you?
Kush is a form of marijuana which is primarily indicative of Afghanistan, part of India and Pakistan. It's got a very high grade of THC, and it's a lot of the marijuana that's sold on the streets in America is referred to as Kush, but in reality, very little Kush ever comes into the country. It's all seeds are brought in, and then it's cultivated within the United States.
Now you mentioned a higher grade of THC. Is a higher grade of THC part of what differentiates between qualities of marijuana?
The potency, yes, that's correct.
Now, sir, you're also familiar in your training experience in the field, the common quantities that marijuana is packaged for sale in Boston.
Yes, I am.
Can you explain some of the common quantities?
It can be packaged either in a joint form, can be packaged in a gram, what they call a bud, can be packaged in eighths of an ounce, quarter ounces, half ounces, ounces, and then you start getting up in a quarter pounds, half pounds, and basically bales of 40-pound bales of marijuana.
Is a $10 amounts a common increment?
Yes, it is.
Is there another name for that usually used?
That's usually called a bud. It's just a small piece of the larger bud.
If I said the term dime, would that have any significance to you?
That also refers to a small bag.
And an ounce of marijuana, how many grams is that?
28 grams.
And so 2 ounces would be about 56 grams?
That's correct.
And a quarter ounce, about 7.5 grams, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, do you know the common street value for an ounce of marijuana in the Boston area in your training experience?
Depending upon the quality of it, can go anywhere from $200 to $325.
And how about a pound of marijuana?
Again, depending upon the quality, it can go anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000.
Are you familiar with the common ways that marijuana is packaged for sale in Boston?
Yes, I am.
Can you explain some of the common ways?
In the smaller consumer packages, it's usually in a plastic bag, like a regular Glad sandwich bag. It's all rolled over. Some of your larger bags may be in a Ziploc bag with a zip seal on it, the airtight seal. Some of the larger quantities, when you're talking about half pounds and up, they're in those large vacuum sealed bags.
Is there a reason you'd use a vacuum sealed bag with respect to marijuana specifically?
It reduces the odor that emanates from it. Marijuana has a very distinctive odor, and it's very pungent, very strong. And by putting it into the airtight bags, it reduces somewhat the smell.
Are there any other reasons for vacuum sealing marijuana?
It keeps it fresher for long, extended periods of time. It won't dry. It won't allow it to dry out as fast.
And can you explain to Jerry what you mean by drying out and why that might be a problem?
Well, any marijuana, it's like any other kind of vegetable, it has a certain amount of water in it. You don't want it to dry out completely because then it starts getting crumbly, it starts losing its potency. So you want to keep it somewhat fresh, but not too damp.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm going to first show you what's been marked as exhibit number 111. You can take all the time you need. You got where you're done. In your training experience, what can you tell us about what's in that bag?
Based on my training experience, this is marijuana.
Now, if I told you hypothetically that all of that would have been one package, what could you tell me about that?
Sorry.
Objection.
Form the question, sustained.
If you saw marijuana in a package, all of that marijuana in one package, in your training experience, would that be consistent with personal use or distribution?
It'd be possessed with the intent to distribute it.
Can you explain why that is?
Most users of marijuana won't buy a bag this big, first of all, because of the cost of it. Second of all, because, as I stated earlier, it'll dry out too quick probably before they were able to use it all. In this bag here, you can see where it's already dried out, and there's crumbs on one side where it's been laying down and being moved around, and on the other side you have the buds.
Sergeant Detective, can you tell us anything about the quality of the marijuana?
It appears to be, from what I can see through the bag, it's a mid to a high level grade of marijuana.
And in your training experience, what leads you to that conclusion?
Based on the texture of the types of the buds that they have in here, which there's some off-coloring to it, which would indicate a higher grade of marijuana.
Thank you. Are you also familiar with some of the common terminology used in the drug trade with specific to marijuana?
Yes, I am.
Are you familiar with what the term zip means?
Yes, I am.
What does it mean in your training experience?
That's a street term for an ounce of marijuana.
Are you familiar with the term loud?
Yes, I am.
What does that mean in your training experience?
That, again, that's a street term for a very potent type of marijuana.
And if somebody used the phrase making plays, what does that mean in your training experience?
That's street jargon that's used to describe selling product.
If somebody used the term 5 dimes, what does that mean in your training experience?
When, with respect to marijuana, that would indicate that they were looking to buy 5 $10 bags.
And although I believe you've already used this phrase, if I use the term bud, what does that mean in your training experience?
Again, that would mean $10 bag.
And lastly, you're familiar with what Molly is?
Yes, I am.
What is that?
Molly is a synthetic drug.
Objection, Judge, may I approach?
Yes.
It's a synthetic amphetamine.
Is it more commonly known as ecstasy?
Yes.
Objection, Judge. Leading question.
Let's be respectful of the form, if you don't mind.
Certainly. Is there a common term for that drug?
It's referred to in some vernacular as ecstasy on the street.
Thank you. Now, in your expertise with narcotics distribution, are you also familiar with some of the tools of the trade used by drug dealers?
Yes, I am.
Are drug dealers commonly in use of multiple phones?
Depending upon what their habits are, they can be in possession of either 2 or more phones, yes.
And why is that?
One would be their personal phone, the other ones would be their street phone or their work phones. A lot of times drug dealers will get the pay-by-the-minute phones, the phones that have no record, no contracts with them. You just go in a local store and put money on the phone. That way there, law enforcement can't trace them. There's no record of any calls being made on them, and then they've had their other phone for their personal use.
Would it be unusual for a drug dealer to switch phones regularly?
Objection.
Would it be unusual to switch? Is it?
You know, drug dealers periodically, depending upon their habits again, will change phones, change numbers.
Would it be unusual to have multiple SIM cards?
No, it wouldn't.
Is it common for a drug dealer to hide objects throughout the house in different places?
Yes, it is.
What type of objects?
They'll hide money, they'll hide their product, their drugs.
Is there a reason they would hide in multiple places?
In the drug business, it's a cash business. Some people do take merchandise, but primarily it's a cash business. They become the targets of home invasions and robberies. So they'll break their product up, so if they were to be robbed, they'd give up a small amount of money and product, and hopefully they wouldn't press on, they just go on their way. They're not going to lose everything.
Is it common for a drug dealer to have a scale?
Yes, it is.
And what type of scales do you most commonly see in your training experience?
Most times, unless they're dealing in large quantities, you'll find small digital scales you can buy in pretty much every convenience store in the city of Boston.
Can you explain to the jury what a grinder is?
A grinder is a small metal object. When you open it up, it has like spikes in it. You take a bud or two of marijuana, you put it in it, and you just repeatedly grind it, and it'll spin it all down, it'll break up all the leaves. If there's any seeds in it, you can separate the seeds from any twigs or anything. You can pull the twigs up before you smoke it.
Is it common for individuals stealing marijuana to use masking agents in their place of residence?
Yes, it is.
What type of masking agents have you seen?
Car air fresheners, multiple plug-in air fresheners that you put the liquid in, multiple cans of air freshener. You just spray around the house, Febreze, Lysol, everything.
How about cologne?
A strong cologne will also be used as a masking agent.
On a general level, can you explain your training experience what a ledger is?
A ledger is either an electronic or a handwritten document which keeps track of sales made, money owed, just like any other business ledger would be.
Are you familiar with what a cutting agent is?
Yes, I am.
Can you explain your training experience what a cutting agent is?
A cutting agent is something that's added to a drug to increase the volume, which would then increase your profit.
In your training experience, is it unusual for a drug dealer to take precautions with respect to protecting themselves and their product?
Yes, it is.
In what ways have you seen that happen?
Most times on their residence or their apartment doors, they'll have heavy locks on it, multiple locks on it sometimes. They may have some type of weapon. It could be anything from a bat to a piece of pipe, to a knife, to a chain, to a firearm.
May I approach, Your Honor? I'm going to first show you exhibit number 77. Do you recognize anything in this photograph?
Yes, in the upper right-hand corner, just above the number 9 marker, there's a grinder that has the Heineken symbol on the outside of it.
Thank you. And I'm going to now show you exhibit number 109. Do you recognize anything in this object?
In the center portion of the photograph, there's a plastic bag with an amount of marijuana in it and another grinder with Bob Marley's face on it right next to it.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I publish to the jury?
Yes.
Looking at exhibit number 77. Is this what you were just referring to?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And again on 109. I'll zoom out.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Now, if I were to show you this photograph, is there anything in your training experience you can tell us?
It appears from the photograph that there's several heat-sealed vacuum type bags on the bottom, and then there's more additional smaller plastic bags wrapped up in another plastic bag.
Thank you. Sergeant, showing you another photograph. Do you recognize what is here?
Based on the numbers in the right-hand column, that would be consistent with a drug ledger.
And what makes you think it's consistent with the drug ledger?
Just the amounts of the, that are written in that right-hand column.
Thank you. For the record, that's page 89 of the ledger previously admitted. And lastly, showing you this object, computer screen printout. Do you recognize anything in your training experience that's written here?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize?
There's wording in this document that indicate street term for an ounce of marijuana. There's also dollar amounts and numbers in there which are consistent with certain size bags of marijuana.
And which word is it consistent with an ounce?
The 250, the 200.
The monetary figures or the numbers, excuse me?
I assume that's what it is, yes, sir.
All right. Anything else?
Then that small little bit of 3 lines of print down the bottom indicating, again, is wording in it that's consistent with street slang for ounces of marijuana, be it the 3 zip bags.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Good afternoon, Sergeant Executive.
Good afternoon.
Grinders for personal use?
Excuse me, sir?
Grinders are for personal use?
Yes, most people grind is for personal use.
And you said drug dealing was a cash business, right?
Pretty much a cash business, yes, sir.
So somebody who's dealing drugs, you expect to find a large amount of cash where they're...
There's reasons why you may not find it, but you would find cash in there, yes, sir.
And, Mr. McCarthy? Sorry. In any case, this is a page that Mr. McCarthy showed you, right?
Yes, it is, sir.
And the numbers that you said were in the right-hand column, what can you tell us those mean?
The 220 would be consistent with an ounce of marijuana. The 500 would be consistent with perhaps maybe 2 ounces, and so on down.
And who would generate this ledger page?
Whoever would be selling the product, marijuana.
So whoever was selling marijuana had presumably given Shaun $200 to sell?
Objection.
Whoever's selling, presumably Shaun has been asking a question.
Is that right?
I can't say he gave him 200. It might be that he received 200 for what a product that he gave him.
So whoever's selling is putting down things he either gave to or received from the people listed in that left-hand column, is that right?
That's correct, yes, sir.
And one of those people is Lil G, L-I-L-G. You see that on the top?
I do, yes, sir.
And the next one is J-R, is that right?
That's also correct.
And then Shaun,
Yes,
and it skips a line, it says Chew, best as I can make out.
that's correct, yes.
And then Chai, C-H-I,
It does, yes.
and then D-V, correct?
DV or DU, I can't make it out myself.
J-W or J-U,
That's correct.
and then John, J-O-N.
That's also correct.
So whoever was keeping this ledger was either giving to or receiving from all of those people those various amounts of product.
That's what it appears like, yes, sir.
When Mr. McCarthy showed you that bag that you said contained marijuana, you said it was appeared to be a high level of marijuana, high grade of marijuana, correct?
From its appearance, yes, it does.
Right. And what really determines whether it's a high grade of marijuana is the THC content, the amount of THC, correct?
That's also correct, yes.
And can you tell from looking at that bag what the THC content was of any of that?
No, that would have to be chemically tested.
Thank you. Have nothing further.
Nothing further.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, this time the comment will be called John Biello. Stand here, face the clerk, and raise your right hand, please.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give this court and the jury and the issue between the Commonwealth and the defendant shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please.
Sir, in a loud, clear voice, could you please introduce yourself to his honor and the members of the jury, spelling your last name for the record?
Shaun, B-L-O, B-I-E-L-L-O.
What do you do for work, sir?
I'm a supervisor in the Trace Arson and Explosives Unit at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory.
What sorts of education do you have?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from Stonehill College.
With regards to your job title, what does that unit and the state police actually do?
In our unit, we look for any presence of ignitable liquids or accelerants in fire-related cases. We look for explosive residues in explosive-type cases. And we also look for the presence of gunshot primer residue in gun-related cases.
Have you received any specialized training with regards to specifically gunshot residue?
Yes.
Okay, could you tell me what that is?
Training entails at the laboratory reading literature in that subject matter, watching casework that's performed by a senior chemist, then performing practice-type casework under the supervision of a supervisor. We perform competency tests and also yearly proficiency tests in that discipline. We also attend any outside training through other agencies and through some of the manufacturers of our equipment that we use.
Is the state lab accredited?
Yes.
Okay, and what does that mean?
Accreditation process, it's a team of crime lab directors from all across the country that come to your laboratory for about a week and ensure that you have protocols, procedures, that you're following those procedures, and that you meet all the standards that is required to be accredited.
Turning your attention to gunshot residue, what is gunshot residue?
Gunshot residue, the primer residue that we're looking for is contained in the back of the ammunition in the primer cup. So when the firing pin hits that primer cup, you're going to have an initial explosion which will ignite your propellant, which ejects the bullet. When you have that explosion, you'll have a release of gas that comes out of all the openings of the weapon. When that gas hits the air, it's going to quickly start to cool and form microscopic particles that get deposited around the weapon. So when you have a particle that's comprised of three elements, lead, antimony, and barium, and has the correct shape or morphology, that's considered a gunshot primer residue particle.
Morphology refers to the actual chemical shape of those three chemical components put together?
The morphology, correct, is the shape of that particle.
Okay. What do you do to test for something to see if it has gunshot residue on it?
The first step is we have collection stubs that, if you can imagine about the size of a dime head and they have a sticky surface, those stubs are what get applied to the area of interest, whether it be from hands or clothing or from vehicles. So those stubs are then submitted to us to analyze for the presence of gunshot primer residue.
What sorts of equipment do you have in your lab in order to do, once you have one of these stubs submitted to you, what do you do next in the process along to see if it has gunshot residue on it?
So then the next step, we use a scanning electron microscope with energy dispersive spectroscopy. That's the piece of equipment that we use to analyze those stubs. The question or unknown stubs are placed in that instrument with a negative control and a positive control. The negative control should have no gunshot primer residue on it, and the positive control should. That's just to ensure quality control. What that instrument will do, it'll analyze the collection stub, and it'll take pictures or images of any particles that are bright or giving off light. So it'll take an image of that particle and then also analyze its elemental composition to see what that particle is made up of. Once that analysis is complete, I will sit down at the equipment and I will go through the particles and determine if they're gunshot primer residue particles or not.
You had mentioned three components, lead, antimony, and barium. How many of those three components do you have to have together in order to be a positive test for gunshot residue?
All three of those elements must be present in one particle. We need to find a minimum of 3 particles in order to have a positive result.
Okay. And the equipment is the electronic microscope that you use once you get those stubs returned to you?
That is correct.
And in this particular case, were there 2 collection kits submitted to you, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do once you received the first collection kit?
Once I receive the collection kit, I take it into my custody and then start to perform, take notes on it, and then start to perform my analysis as I described before.
And did you, there are 2 items that were submitted to you, or 2 stubs that were taken from 2 different items?
There were a total of 4 stubs taken from 2 items.
Starting with the first item, item 1-1, what was that stub taken from?
That was labeled as coming from a jacket.
And what did you do with regards to that jacket to test whether or not it had gunshot residue primer on it?
I placed those collection stubs that were taken from the jacket. One was labeled from the right cuff area, one from the left cuff area. I placed those into my scanning electron microscope for analysis.
Did you receive any results after you put them in your electronic microscope?
Yes.
And what were those results based upon your experience and training?
That item was positive for gunshot primer residue.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you to also, were you given 2 stubs from gray gloves?
Yes.
Okay. And did you analyze those stubs from those 2 gray gloves?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you analyze those stubs?
Once again, I received those stubs and I placed them into my scanning electron microscope for analysis.
And based upon your experience and training, did you have a form of conclusion as to what the results were of those?
Yes.
And what was that?
That item was positive for gunshot primer residue.
If I may approach?
Yes.
So I'm going to show you a document, just to take a few moments to look at that document and look up when you're done. Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
And what is that document?
That is the report that I generated after my analysis of those items.
And is that your signature on the second page?
That's correct.
I'd ask that this be marked as the next exhibit.
Without objection, please mark it.
Report, Your Honor. 143 is that its number, so that item is 143 for the record.
I have nothing further.
Cross.
Thank you, Judge. You didn't collect the stubs, correct?
That's correct.
And so you don't have any way of judging the quality of the collection, is that fair to say?
I can only judge the stubs that were submitted to me.
And you said that you got item 1-1, which was from a black jacket, correct?
Correct.
And how many stubs?
There were 2 stubs.
And you checked for both the right cuff area and the left cuff area, correct?
Correct.
And you said you got gunshot residue
Correct.
from which, either the right cuff or the left cuff, or what?
We consider it one item so that the jacket is positive for gunshot
But
primer
you
residue.
can't tell us whether it came from the right cuff or the left cuff?
I can tell you which particles came from what.
You
Yes,
can.
I can.
Did you have that information with you?
I do.
Why don't you consult it and tell me where the positive gunshot residue was on the cuffs?
There was a total of 5 gunshot primer residue particles. 3 came from the right cuff area, 2 came from the left cuff area.
And there were 2 stubs for the coat, from the gloves?
That's correct.
And did you get gunshot residue positives for both gloves?
The gloves are considered one item, so it was positive
Did
for,
you get gunshot residue on both gloves?
yes.
And how many from the right glove and how many from the left?
There were 3 off the right glove and 1 off the left glove.
Now, it's important to make sure when you're determining whether or not gunshot residue is present, to make sure that there isn't any contamination, correct?
Correct.
And it's important to get the stubbing done as quickly as possible after the gun has been discharged, correct?
When it comes to the hands, yes.
Within 4 hours, correct?
That's correct.
Whether you're dealing with hands or clothing or whatever, you want to make sure that whatever it is, in this case, let's deal with the gloves and or coat, okay? You want to make sure it doesn't come, the gloves or the coat don't come into contact with anything else that might contain gunshot residue, correct?
That's correct.
So you don't want to put somebody in a police car without some sort of protection on the, to make sure that there isn't contamination, correct?
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Well, you know that sometimes people get their hands bagged and their cuffs bagged and they're being transported to the police station, so there's a contamination, correct?
That's up to each individual department what their procedures
That's
are.
done for the purposes of maintaining the integrity of the item, correct?
That is why it's done, correct?
And one of the things you're concerned about in making sure that you're getting a proper reading is that there isn't any transfer from one object to another, correct?
Can you rephrase that or repeat the question?
Maybe this is a little bit simpler. In your conclusions, you say that the fact that it's positive, there are 2 possible conclusions from that, correct?
That's correct.
One is that he may have been in the vicinity of the firearm when it was discharged, correct?
Correct.
Or may have come into contact with an item with gunshot primer residue on it, correct?
Correct.
So if you fired a gun and came up and shook my hand soon thereafter, I might have gunshot residue in my hand, correct?
That's correct.
Now, at any time, did you get any stubs that came from a black overcoat?
Those are the only stubs that I received.
And if you had gunshot residue on these 2 gloves, and the gloves were inside the pockets of a coat, it would be easy, you might expect to find gunshot residue in the pockets of that coat, correct?
That's possible.
It's something you'd want to check, right?
I can't answer that. I can't answer that. I wasn't there at the collection.
And there's no way to tell from your analysis when the gunshot residue was placed on those gloves or on that coat, correct?
That's correct.
Or who was wearing that coat when the gunshot residue was put on it?
Correct.
Or the gloves, correct?
Correct.
And again, if someone had shaken hands with somebody and they had gloves on, they might well have come up with gunshot residue if that other person had been in contact with gunshot residue previously, right?
That's possible, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Carroll, let's just ask you a few questions about a 4-hour rule.
Correct.
What does that apply to?
That applies to the hands. After 4 hours, we tend not to be able to recover GSR, or gunshot primer residue, from the hands.
And that's based upon your scientific testing and experience in the lab?
Correct.
Okay. And does that 4-hour rule apply to clothing?
No.
Why is that?
As long as the item has been preserved and not altered, those particles can remain on those surfaces for a long period of time.
And with the hands, sometimes people sweat or wash their hands.
Correct. Those are all factors. Washing, friction, rubbing can easily remove those particles.
Nothing further.
Mr. Carroll, just briefly, Judge. Is there any way you can tell from the gunshot residue that you retrieved that was taken from the jacket versus that taken from the gloves, whether that gunshot residue was from the same gun or not?
I cannot, no.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You're excused. We'll announce the next witness.
John Green?
Face the clerk, raise your right hand, please.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give the court and the jury in the issue between the Commonwealth and the defendant shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
May I proceed, Your Honor? Please. Sir, in a likely voice, could you please introduce yourself to His Honor and the members of the jury, spelling your last name for the record?
Good afternoon. My name is John M. Green, Green.
What do you do for work, sir?
I'm the chief of the Forensic Audio Video Image Analysis Unit at the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office.
Could you briefly describe what that unit does?
I run a unit that comprises of 4 people, including myself. What our duties are within the unit is to look at all audio and video that comes in on a case, images. It could be a homicide, it could be any type of case. And so we receive all of that, we look at it, we analyze it, and then we help the ADAs put it all together for the trials.
Prior to you working at the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, where did you work, sir?
I work for the FBI,
How long did you work for the FBI for?
42 years.
What did you do for the FBI?
I was a forensic video examiner and a photographer at the FBI.
What sorts of training have you received as a result of your time during the working for the FBI?
All my training while at the FBI was through the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia. It comprised of many different facets. The video training, the audio training, image analysis, to be able to take images from video or from stills and do comparisons.
And during your time at the FBI, what sorts of cases have you worked on?
I worked many cases. Could be international espionage, simple bank robberies, kidnappings, organized crime, things of a varying nature. My particular position, I was able to cover many different types of investigations that the FBI had in the New England area.
Did you participate or during your time at the FBI, did you learn about video forensics?
Yes, I did.
What sorts of things did you learn about at the FBI?
Well, the video forensics program, it was a 3.5-year training period. And the video forensics, it allowed you, it taught me, they taught me to look at all different types of video, digital video, analog video from videotapes itself, how to take that, how to look at it, how to process it, and how to look at all the individual frames and extract from that information that we need to proceed with an investigation.
Has the technology changed since you began to work for the FBI?
It has considerably.
In what way? Briefly, can you briefly describe it?
Now, when I first started working for the FBI, say a simple bank robbery was, they had film cameras that were in behind the tellers, and my job was to retrieve the film from a bank robbery, get it processed, and now look through thousands of individual frames. Then it progressed to videotape, and now to its present state, which is all digital video recorders and digital storage.
In your time in the FBI and the time that you've been working for the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, have you kept up with the change in technology with regards to videos
Yes, you have to.
and video surveillance?
Yes.
Okay. Have you also received training as in regards to analyzing for video images?
Yes.
And what sorts of training have you received?
Again, it's part of this extensive training that I had down at the FBI Academy, the FBI Laboratory, where you were brought in for specialized classes on looking at individual frames of video and taking from that different things that would make the identification of an individual, how would you call it, where you'd be able to compare articles of clothing, rings, facial features, dents on automobiles, things of that nature. So I would make comparisons with these items that were on a video coupled with images taken at, say, a crime scene, or say a car was retrieved that was used in the process of a commission of a crime. I could then take the video, and I could take those two items, the known and the unknown, be in the video, and put them together, and then extrapolate from that different significant items on the vehicle itself that would make it unique in itself.
You're talking about the known and the unknown. The known would be if you recover a car in a car chase or recover clothing from a particular person.
That's correct.
And the unknown would be whether or not those items are consistent with what appears in video surveillance.
That's correct. I would match that up to the videotape itself. I'd be looking at the videotape. I'd be matching unique items, items of interest, say from clothing or an automobile or a watch, or and then making the comparisons and saying that this is that.
Let me turn your attention to this case, sir. In this case, were you provided a series of different surveillance videos?
I was.
And Your Honor, for the record, we have added the surveillance videos to exhibit number 101 by agreement. Sir, I'm just going to show you on a screen ahead of you. Do you recognize those folders?
I do.
And what are those folders?
Those are folders that contain digital video that was submitted to me for analysis.
Okay. And each individual folder has a title on it, 19 Palm Pastry being the first one. What is that video, what does that folder contain?
That contains images that were taken by a camera. All these cameras were placed in different areas throughout a neighborhood, and 18 Pompey Street will be a camera or two, or depending on the number of cameras in the folder that was stationed at a certain place. There could be a camera or it could be 10 cameras all fed to a DVR, a digital video recorder, where the digital video recorder would then record anything that might happen within front of those particular cameras.
Now, you just mentioned the digital video recorder. Are you trained to go out and to retrieve video from different systems?
I have the training.
Okay. And can you briefly describe, are there many different types of video surveillance systems?
There are. Almost all the video systems that you see are all unique amongst themselves. If we went out and there was a crime and there were 10 videos that were offered to us for download, they're probably from 10 different systems, ranging from very old systems to new high-definition systems.
And with regards to making sure that you're capturing the correct time period, what do you do when you retrieve these videos to make sure that you're capturing the time frame at which you want to capture? Say a bank robbery happens at 7 p.m.
Well, when I would download digital video recorders, the first thing that I would check the on-screen time and date that was being displayed by the video system. Then I would check it against my iPhone. The iPhone works off the atomic clock, so it's accurate to within, I would say, 1,000th of a second. So I would check those two individual time date items, and then I would note the discrepancy if there was one, or even if there wasn't a discrepancy, then I would write that there was no discrepancy.
In each individual surveillance camera system, somebody sets up and sets the time, correct?
They do.
And sometimes those things can be off by a couple minutes or a couple days even.
It could be. You could have a power outage. The system could, upon the power coming back on, it could power itself up, and now it's back to maybe a default time date. And so the times and the dates would be really off.
So when it's collected, it's usually there's some notation about a time difference, is that right?
Yes, there
Is
is.
there anything else you can do to make sure that if you have a series of, say, if it's series of 10 businesses down the street to make sure that you're capturing the correct images as you go down the street from the different surveillance camera systems?
Well, what I look at, if there are, say, 10 different systems, then I'll download a lot of that material. If I notice that the time and date is off, then what I'll do is I'll look for visual cues. If it's a person that's walking or a car that's driving down the street, I will look for that because that particular car, if it's going in the direction of the cameras, then you'll see it cross each camera system.
Now, sir, going back to this particular case, you were provided surveillance video from different locations, is that correct?
That's correct.
So you were provided surveillance from 18 Pompey Street,
Yes.
28 Allerton,
Yes.
65 Allerton,
Yes, sir.
91 Allerton,
Yes, sir.
100 Magazine,
Yes, sir.
126 Magazine,
Yes, sir.
3315 Avenue,
Yes.
English High School,
Yes.
English MBTA Ruggles Station,
Yes, sir.
another Ruggles Station video,
Yes, sir.
Middlesex video from a search warrant that was done,
Yes, sir.
video from Suffolk Construction,
Yes, sir.
video from a Sunoco,
Yes.
video from a U-Haul,
Yes, sir.
and then video transfer of drugs, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And sir, were you asked to line up those series of videos to put in sort of a movie frame
Yes.
of a continuous time frame?
Yes, I was.
And how did you do that?
I looked at all the individual videos. I had what they call a clip list. So as a clip list is a time, date, chronological list of the clips that I needed to look at, that I needed to clip out of the, say, the entire, say if there was an hour video there and I needed 4 15-second clips, then I would go through, I would take those particular clips out, and then I would start building my composite. The composite all runs in chronological order from the time that the person would leave one place to the time that the person would end up back in the place that they alighted from.
May I approach?
Right.
Sure, I'm going to show you a document. Do you recognize that document?
I do.
And what is that document?
This is a schematic of the area that in question that we were looking at, that I was dealing with, and the associated cameras, where their placement is at the different locales. And one of the interesting things is that there's an image.
I think we're moving too fast. Why don't you
Sure.
get back direction?
If I may ask, this be marked as the next exhibit?
Any objection?
Your Honor, we have 144 on that, right? Sorry, I... 144, Your Honor, schematic.
If I may publish this, Your Honor?
Yes.
So I want to, and was this schematic also digitally provided on a thumb drive as well?
Yes, it was.
Is that the same as what was just marked as 144?
Yes, it's the same.
So turning your attention to, let's start with 18 Pompey Street. There's an arrow from 18 Pompey Street to up to the right-hand corner here on the
That's
screen.
correct.
What are those pictures of?
Those are pictures of the camera placement at Pompey Street that show an individual walking on the sidewalk. That, in my master composite, is the beginning of my particular video that I assembled in this case.
And what was the next video that you used to compile your master composite?
I'll have to actually see there are 23 separate cuts in the video itself. So I would have to really see the video in action, where I do so many different videos. I would be able to look at it here.
All right, let's start off with this, what's been addressed or labeled as Harrison Master Video. Did you create this, sir?
I did.
And you created 23 different clips of video, is that correct?
I did.
In somewhat chronological order?
They are. There are 23 clips. Some of them are repetitious, but the repetition of the particular clip shows something else going on in that same view.
And starting off with here, this is 18 Palm Pastry, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that correlates with just, I'm going to do this once, but not, I think. That particular clip came from the video out of 18 Pompey Street folder in the videos organized, correct?
It did.
And that had a different proprietary software that you had to, based upon your training, put into a format that you could mold into one video that's all of one format.
Right. What I did with each and every one of these videos in order to maintain consistency, from each capture, what I did was I screen captured everything. I have a special screen capture device at my forensic workstation back at the office. We have special software, special devices to accurately capture all these images. And then it allows me to save it in a uniform setting and then assemble everything.
Court's permission, may we dim the lights, Shaun?
Yes.
With regards to, just for the record, we played the entire video entitled Harrison Master Video. With regards to, I believe it's 65 Allerton. With regards to the folder entitled 28 Allerton Street, 6:55 p.m. All right, this doesn't seem to be working, so I'm going to go back to master video. I'm going to go to master video, and for the record, I'm going to go to stop this at 1 minute and 11 seconds. Sir, you talked a little bit earlier about visual cues.
Yes.
Yes. I may approach. Yes. So I'm going to show you a document in front of you. The 28 Allerton subfolder there had video in it, and in that subfolder that had a player that you could zoom in on the person that was walking, correct?
That's correct.
We're having a little bit of technical difficulties this afternoon, but looking at 1:11 in the video there, that person walking and captured by the 28 Allerton video, were you able to look to see if there was any visual cues about that particular person walking?
I did.
And what was that?
I was looking at the coat that the person was wearing, the gloves that he was wearing, and a particular glint to a shiny object that was on the front of the jacket.
That's been previously marked exhibit number 61. Do you have a chance to take a look at this jacket?
I have.
And what particular, you're talking about a glint, what are you talking about?
On the front of this coat, is this little button right here. This is metal. It's probably the only metal product on the jacket. And as this person was walking, this would catch specular light from either windows or overhead lamps from the street lights, and it would cause this thing to shine. Now, I looked at several areas of the video, and by playing the video, it just wasn't an anomaly. There was a consistency in this shine here.
In the particular area of that jacket as that person's walking down the street.
Right, that's exactly the position that lands in, as you can see it, right on the breast area of the jacket.
Okay. And did you put together, did you take any other notations about this jacket?
I did.
And what was that?
Other things that you could see while the jacket was being played in the video is there are two impressions that are on the left-hand upper part of the sleeve. And as you can see here, when somebody is walking, again, these are shiny, they're stitched, and while someone is walking, it's causing reflections. And this part of the jacket right here is matte, and these two emblems here are stitched in this shiny, which would cause that to be revealed in the video itself. Another thing that I saw were the position of the pockets on the jacket. This is like a car coat type jacket, so there's slit pockets here, and there are pockets here that are lower, and in the video, these same pockets appear in the same position.
If I may just publish that briefly to the jury, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, sir, I'm going to show you it's also previously been marked as an exhibit, which is Exhibit 36 for those items.
Right, this is a pair of gloves, blue on the top and black, gray underneath,
And
gray along the sides of the fingers.
And I'm showing you that document, so were you able to make any visual cues about that as well from the video?
Yes, I was looking at the type of glove that the person was wearing. It looked similar in nature. And as you followed the video, I couldn't place naturally all the individual frames on here, but as you would watch the person walking down the street, you would see glimpses of what appeared to be a lighter color around the finger. Dark on the top, lighter on the bottom, again with a lighter portion around the edge of the fingers.
And ask that this be marked as the next exhibit?
Objections? Please mark it.
Video composites. Video composites,
I may publish this, Your Honor?
Yes.
145 for the record, Your Honor.
And again, sir, 145 was also loaded on a thumb drive as well, is that correct?
Yes.
So when you're saying for visual cues, you were looking for that particular breast area, that person walking down the street, is that right?
Yes, I was.
And for the arm area, so that shiny object there,
That's correct.
and that arm area there, you're looking to see if you see that or that area there,
That's correct. Yes.
and that particular shiny object as well in that last portion, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And also you were talking about the placement of the the pockets on that jacket
Right, the pockets were lower,
and the big flap on those
and
jackets?
it has a flap, exactly.
Okay. The gloves, you were talking about the side of the glove and the bottom of the glove, and you're making a comparison to how that person's holding?
That's it.
They're holding that up, something up to their ear?
Yeah, the hand is up to their ear. I don't know what they have in their hand, but using those gloves, dog gloves similar to it.
Just going back to the master video playing 111 along, what you were saying about the consistency of that shine there in the center of the screen on the left side of the jacket resting. You were talking about discrepancies. Obviously in some of this video there's some snow. What you're saying is that the discrepancies are not either the camera itself or there's snow or something. There's a consistency as that person walks down the street this direction.
That's correct.
That
There's no
area.
aberration up to the lens. It was snowing out for a period, but when you watch that, the image is very clear. As the person is walking up the street, you'll see that reflection from time to time.
In the glove
And it's
area,
in the right place.
in the glove area, you were talking about that. That's the sides of the glove there
That's correct.
showing. Okay. And then coming back. Again, 28 Allerton Street. Sorry. And at 2 minutes and 47 seconds, you were talking about that area of that fold of the left arm sleeve of those two marcations.
That's correct. When you step through the video, frame by frame, you can see that as the person moves down the street. Not every single frame has it, but there are enough frames in there to repeat that visual cue to show that there is something on the side of the coat.
If I may have a brief moment, Your Honor. Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you. Just go.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Mr. Green.
Good afternoon, Mr. Carroll.
Do you know how many coats like that there are in the city of Boston?
I have no idea.
And you're looking for these visual cues on the coat. I don't know why that's so hard to say, but excuse me. Cues on the coat, okay. And you, on this, that you put together, these two pictures are pictures you took up close from the coat, correct?
That's right. Those were photographic evidence pictures that were provided to me, and then I used those particular items from the coat itself and blew them up for intelligibility, and yeah.
But you can't tell whether or not this symbol is the same symbol that's on the front of the jacket, can you?
No, you can't.
And the things on the sleeves, the patterns on the sleeves, you can't tell whether that's the same pattern on the sleeves, can you?
You can tell by the position of it. You can't tell by the pattern
You can't tell the pattern's the question.
with any distinct
Right.
clarity, correct?
Right. And you made reference to the gloves that the individual in these two videos, the backs of these, down here in the middle, on the bottom of the page, that's the backs of the gloves, correct?
That should be, if I could,
The back of the hand,
yeah, the
correct?
back of the hand, that's correct, the top of the hand.
And there are white markings toward the pinkies on each glove, correct?
Right, and if you turn it over,
I'm talking about the back of the glove.
okay,
There's white marking toward the pinkies on each of those gloves, correct?
that's correct,
And there's a white line that jogs up on each of those gloves, correct?
along the sides,
And
correct?
there's white marking down toward the cuff of the gloves, correct?
Yes.
You don't see that in those pictures, do you?
If you look at all the frames,
don't
you
see
might catch that.
Do you see that in here?
The white part of the,
From the back of the hand, of the glove.
Well, if you watch the video, you'll see that there are frames in which that appears there. But in those two there, you can't see
In
them.
response to Mr. Bradley's question, you said there appears to be some color around the fingers, but you didn't say anything about the back of the glove, did you?
No, I wasn't, no, because the distinction isn't with the back of the glove. The distinction is with the palm and on the side of the fingers.
Right. How many gloves are there in the city of Boston have the dark on the back and the gray or white on the front?
There's probably hundreds.
And how many of them have the markings that are on the backs of these gloves? Do you know?
I have no idea.
You began this video compilation at 18 Pompey Street, correct?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that that video with a person walking down the street was from a camera at 18 Pompey Street?
That was the information that was provided to me.
And that person in the video just keeps walking straight by. You don't see that person turn into a building or anything, do you?
No, you don't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any other witnesses today? Any of the witnesses scheduled for tomorrow? There's good news, bad news. We've had some delay, very modest one. It's not to be attributed to the defendant in any way. And we're going to suspend today and resume